Hi, in today's video we will be viewing the bones of the skull. This picture here is the interior view of the skull. Some of the bones found on the skull would be such as the frontal bone, the bone right above here, the parietal bone right back behind the frontal bone. Another bone is the temporal bone, which is out on the sides, which is not quite clear on this picture. The zygomatic bone around the cheekbone, the nasal bone, the sphenoid bone, and the sphenoid bone goes out through the back. Ethmoid bone is not quite clear in this picture, but it's off to the side, right above, around this area. Okay, and also what we see here will be the mandibule. And inside the mandibule, you'll see these openings, and those are the mental foramen. Right above here where the teeth are is what we would call the alveolar margins. Above that, we find the maxilla. And in the maxilla, we found these openings right around this area. And those are the infraorbital foramen. Now let's take a closer look at the nose, where we will find the vomer, this area right here. Above it, we find the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone. These bones right here are the middle nasal concha. Nasal bone right around here. Openings above the eye are the supraorbital foramen. Now let's take a look at a lateral side of the skull, where we will take a closer look at the parietal bone, this temporal bone follows all throughout here, the sphenoid bone, and we still, in this view, we will see the mandibule, the maxilla, the alveolar margins, the nasal bone. Now let's take a look at the mandibule. This notch right above here is the mandibular notch. The angle right above, below the mandibule is the mandibular angle. Above that, in this area, we find the carinoid process. Off to the side, we find the mastoid process. And this small opening right above here, it is the external acoustic meatus. Now we will view the inferior view of the skull, which first off, we will see the incisive fossa. Below that, you see a small line running down the incisive fossa, and that is the intermaxillary suture. Below that, you find a small area, and that is the palatine bone. zygomatic bone once again. These areas right below it are the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. The vomer found right around this area. Off to the side, we will find the foramen ovale. Below that, the foramen lucerium. Another opening we find is the jugular foramen. Another opening off to the side is the stylomastoid foramen. A big opening we find is the foramen magnum. Off to above it, occipital condyle, these two areas. These bones coming out are the styloid process of the temporal bone. Above it, we find the mandibular fossa, these two off to the side. The parietal bone back here. This entire bone is the occipital bone. Now the internal anatomy of the inferior portion of the skull. In this picture, we view the frontal bone, this area right around here. Just below midline, we find the parietal bone. Goes all down. Once again, we have the foramen magnum. Right above it, we found some openings, and those are the hypoglossal canal. Can't quite view it. We find the hypoglossal fossa of the sella turcica, and here we will see the crista galli, the cuneiform plate, the olfactory foramina. We will also view the lesser wing and greater wing of the sphenoid bone. The lesser, the greater, right below it. These openings right through the middle are the foramen ovale. Below it, we view the foramen lucerium. Above the foramen ovale, so foramen rotundum. The optic canal, this entire bone right throughout here, is the temporal bone. This once again, occipital bone. And that is it for the skulls